The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Let's go! What's It's gonna be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
Toss to White. He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth! What a comeback!
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Here are your hosts, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Erik Watkins. Hello and welcome to another Football to the Max. And yes, you heard it. Alabama wins. National champions again, as the committee must be feeling really good right now at their decision to put them number 4, and then Nick Saban and crew go on to prove them right. Erik Watkins is of course here with me, and glad that I can finally change that intro and get Erik into that part of it. I feel bad it took that long, but
sometimes things just happen, and I have 3 things to say. A, yawn. B, called it. C, oh God, we're going to have to hear so much from the committee over the next couple of years.
Well, I think a lot of people would have said, yeah, Alabama, go with them. The prevalent thing for me is just, it's going to be that mystery, right, of, well, does this mean we're going to have more of these where 2 teams from one conference gets in? Do they correct next year and make sure it didn't happen again? I mean, I know the game actually didn't wound up being pretty decent. You know, I think a lot of people were expecting this, ultra defensive battle and everything else, but it went to overtime. And Georgia had the lead. And then if they sacked the quarterback way back there, you're thinking, oh, it's going to be one of these. Alabama's going to get their due. And the next play is what happened there that you heard in the intro. And Alabama is national champion. It's kind of crazy.
It is. In seeing the first half, Jalen Hurts really couldn't move the ball offensively. He looked pretty tentative, as he's prone to do all season. And then the backup, the brand new flying Hawaiian, comes in, the left-handed savior, and it's like, all right, let's do this.
So you think this winds up in a Cardell Jones situation?
I wouldn't say completely. I would say, though, because I believe Hurts has 1 more year left.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and the fact that you're dealing with a true freshman here, so it's going to bring up a good open competition going into the spring for the Crimson Tide.
And we have Saban doesn't normally like to, but we have seen him do it, where he does the dual quarterback thing. So I mean, maybe that's something that they look into next year. It's so weird because Jalen Hurts have been fine until that game, and then all of a sudden he just has an absolutely putrid first half. Credit to Georgia's defense as well, and second half you bring in the new guy and he carries them to a comeback. They were down 27.
Oh yeah, down 20-7, down 13-0 at the half, and I even said, hey, Georgia, if they want to do anything and have any sort of a shot, they needed that touchdown at the end of the half. They got it, but they really didn't prepare. Not to mention it was terrible coverage on that 2nd and 26. Terrible coverage.
That was awful. Yeah, I mean it was triggered by not being able to bump the guy, which that makes a big difference because the safety couldn't come over. But still, it's you got to be prepared better than that. I feel like at that moment, all you have to do is make sure they don't get a touchdown. You've already done a good job of making it difficult on a field goal for a guy that's missed 2 on the night. We got to remember he had a chance to actually give Alabama the win, and he missed. So all you had to do was make sure Alabama didn't get that first down, much less a touchdown, and you give it up that easily. It seems weird.
It just is, not to mention the fact that Georgia, even up to that play, they really let up on some of their physicality. Yes, they had the great sack on first down. Yes, they were still able to pretty much stop the run game. But I think that in a lot of that second half, they just took their foot off the gas. And you don't do that against Nick Saban.
Yeah, and then you have a 4th and 4 where you could have really put things into your favor and they score. I mean, so you're looking at so many things that Georgia could have avoided, but there you are again, Georgia, whether it's college or professional, you're blowing a lead in a championship game. I mean, do you think that this, I mean, for Georgia that hadn't been there in such a long time, I mean, what do you think this means for them going forward? Because Alabama, they'll probably do this again.
They probably will. I heard they're odds-on favorite to repeat, which doesn't surprise me. And honestly, with the way Georgia is, are they going to have a bit of a hangover? Absolutely. But I think with Kirby Smart, especially being another of Saban's assistants, I think he's going to get them back together, make a couple of tweaks, and make a run that, okay, if we don't see them in the regular season, we're probably going to see them in the SEC championship game back in Atlanta next year. Let's make that our goal and get our slice of revenge.
Exactly. And this was the matchup that I think a lot of people were expecting in the SEC championship game. You get it in this national championship game. And maybe this is the matchup that we're, like you said, happens again next year. I mean, you've got Jake Fromm coming back. There's several key players coming back as well for Georgia, and we talked about it for Alabama. Look, it doesn't matter with Nick Saban's teams. They could lose a slew of guys, and they're right back at it the next year, just how good he is at recruiting. But I feel like even though maybe the ratings may still go down, as you would expect, and all that stuff, I feel like the game lived up to the hype. Maybe it wasn't the best game. Certainly, what Georgia and Oklahoma did in the semifinals was tremendous, and it was going to be very hard to equal that. But I feel like it was still pretty good, though. It could have been much worse.
Oh, yeah. It turned out to be a fantastic game. I, for one, saw it as a blowout for Alabama. In the first half, it really was a blowout in Georgia's favor. But for the Tide to come back, eventually force overtime like they did, go on and win it. I mean, it was a very muted feeling because this was an all-SEC team, really in SEC territory. But that's really my only drawback. The game itself was great. It just didn't have the mass appeal like a lot of people hope for.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when it gets very regionalized. But It happens, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in sports sometimes. Seen it in baseball. You got it in the Super Bowl when the Patriots and Giants would play. I mean, this is going to happen at times, depending on who's good that year and who's not. But I think we can move on from that. It was again a better than expected championship game, and college will come up again when we talk about the NFL draft. But for the most part, that's sort of it for the college game until spring ball comes around and uh, all that kind of stuff. But moving that focus, as we said here, we're not gonna go step by step through these NFL games that are already 4 days old by the time you're listening to this. With most of you listening to it Wednesday and beyond. Let's start with this whole thing with the Patriots saga here and the ESPN report that came out about Brady, Belichick, and Kraft being at odds, and there being this pride thing that who was the one that was the reason for the dynasty and all this stuff. And it's like, I think it's interesting from a perspective of, could this be happening? Sure, it's possible that this may have happened, but the Patriots are also the kings of dealing with crazy stuff happening to them. So sometimes you wonder if, like Tom Brady says in one of the interviews that he cuts after this whole thing went down, it's like people got to start being really tricky about how they talk about us because we've learned to deal with adversity so well.
Yeah, and one of the big things is normally everybody's tight-lipped. Everything is stonewalled. But I think of the fact that all this stuff is just been going on and going on and going on, and little things have been leaking out, really dating all the way back to the Garoppolo trade. I think the three of them are just like, enough's enough. And what was a very powerful triumvirate in New England, now alliances are formed and battle lines have been drawn. And I think that's what's leading to this saga and all of these reports. I mean, it was inevitable given how long the fact that they've been together. And I, for one, am kind of glad to see it happen.
I mean, it obviously disrupts one of the NFL's, great teams, and now that's going to be a huge talking point with the Titans going in, even though a lot of people still expect that, as we'll get into, for the Patriots to do the business and move on.
Mm-hmm.
But still, for me, it's interesting what Brady says, right? That they hadn't talked about Garoppolo since like June. And then the only time he was brought up again was during the trade deadline where he was asked, are you okay with this? And I mean, I wouldn't expect him to say, oh yeah, I'm just overjoyed at the fact that you're trading him or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I do think it's genuine. He does keep up with all these guys that have left, right? And I think this one, it just might have been one of those where I wonder if it really goes down the way ESPN says, right? I think some of that might be a little sensationalized, as considering you're not naming any sources in the entire story either, which is very interesting from that perspective.
Right, and that gives you a little bit of a question into what's going on at ESPN. What are some of their motives for all of this? Because it is a little bit quirky. But at the same time, they haven't named any sources, but how are these things coming out? Are someone like Brady or Belichick leaking things and then all of a sudden deciding to put up a united front when they're called out? I mean, is it true a lot of some things have come out from Garoppolo himself? I mean, it's kind of puzzling to put together the trail of what's leading back to whom.
Yeah, I mean, and it does make sense from Belichick's perspective, right? Because you would have to think that this is not a Phil Jackson situation where, okay, well, I'll retire when Brady does.
Right.
He's given no indication of that. Could it happen? Sure, it could. That maybe at that point, if Brady does play till he's 45 or 43 or whatever, Belichick coaches a few more years and he says, all right, I might not want to do this, my whole life and be 80 and still be coaching, or maybe he does, and he is a competitor, and we've seen that, and in order for him to keep up the way things have been for him in this stretch with the Patriots, you got to have the heir apparent. You got to have the guy that comes after. And Garoppolo, by all intents and purposes, and from the limited amount of games that we saw in San Francisco, which was pretty much all good, that he seemed like the guy. So if you're Belichick, wouldn't you do everything you could to keep Garoppolo? Because Brady is one injury away from, oh God, who are we starting now? Brian Hoyer?
Yes. Well, not just injury, but age. Brady's now 40. Next season, 41. You're not like someone like a Steve DeBerg who started a game for the Atlanta Falcons at 44. You're not a George Belanda who played in 1974, was a quarterback for the Oakland Raiders at the age of 45, 47. These kinds of things are anomalies for a reason. And no matter what with this TB12 method or Alex or Guerrero, time is undefeated. Belichick knew that. Yeah, he knew that, and he also realized, hey, I need to see if I can keep coaching and keep winning with someone else. I know what Brady's got me. I know what he wants to do. I know what he's doing now, but if I want to keep this thing going for another 5-6 years and ride off into the sunset, maybe with another ring or two, I can't hitch my wagon to him. I gotta go younger.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Belichick's only got so many years left, and Brady, like you said, I mean, that method may work, and he may play until then. Obviously, it depends greatly on if that offensive line improves and protects him, because if, he's getting sacked like Jacoby Brissett was, or Andrew Luck when he was playing for the Colts, which, still up in the air as to whether he's going to be healthy for next year or not, or Russell Wilson, if it becomes one of those where Brady's getting sacked more often than not, that age might start creeping up with him. Even in that week 1 game, what were we talking about? Or not us, but several others were ready to chime in. Oh, he's old. Oh, look at the way this is happening. Oh. And then what did he go out and do? Showed he could still do it at 40.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. He's able to do that and keep doing that, but at the same time, as you said, how much longer are you going to keep doing that? And if you're going to do that, why not do that with someone else? And I've mentioned this on past shows. Belichick has still got something to prove being the competitor that he is, creating something else, or creating this wonderful system that's won so many championships. I can do this with just about anybody. Let me have someone else long term, and I'll show you what I can still do. And Brady, there's still going to be that question. I've done everything here. Could I have done something somewhere else? And had it not been for intervention from Robert Kraft, we would have the answers to both of those questions right now.
I don't think it's totally intervention from Robert Kraft. I think there is an element of Brady as well.
Oh, yes.
Brady had to okay that trade, right? If he really wanted to do something outside of New England, he would have said, no, keep him here. Let him start over me, right? But he seems to be fine where he is. He knows what his legacy is. I don't think he feels like I have to go out and prove that I'm not a quote unquote system quarterback. I think he obviously knows that there's going to be people, whether they win the Super Bowl or not, that, you know, hey, I'm going to be one of the greatest of all time. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean it. People, that's going to be argued forever because it's subjective and it is what it is. But it grows harder and harder with every step that they take in playoffs and every division title that they win and every Super Bowl that they win. I mean, it's going to be really hard. Say this guy wins 6 Super Bowls. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that is a huge feat. And then to go and say, oh, he's just a system guy. He doesn't deserve all this. He doesn't deserve to be one of the greatest of all time. I mean, it speaks for itself.
Absolutely. And I have no qualms in saying his greatness, but it's always going to be that sort of a question mark. What if X, Y, and Z had happened? I mean, we saw even with the other great guys, and as you go back in the 70s, Terry Bradshaw, that relationship with Chuck Noll only worked but for so long. But once Bradshaw retired, Chuck Noll still had a great record, but couldn't achieve that same level of excellence.
Mm.
Joe Montana and Bill Walsh in the 80s, they were together, they won Super Bowls, but then look what happened. After Bill Walsh left, yes, you still had that same, not quite the same level of success, but that made the transition to Steve Young easier. He wound up getting a ring, while Montana still had success in Kansas City. You have all of these questions answered, and I'm not even going into the situation with the 90s, with Dallas, with Brett Favre and the Packers. That's a whole different story altogether. But you have all of this evidence, and you have these questions for these decades answered. You even have with Peyton Manning answered, going from Indianapolis to Denver. This is the only one that's going to create a debate, possibly for a generation or more.
I mean, but that's the thing, right? I mean, yeah, it's all these stories of guys doing well with other teams are out there, and I just think if Brady, he would do just fine with another team as well. I don't think that you can complain about whatever it is, this system, that thing, this guy, whatever, the OC, whoever it is. Greatness is greatness. They rise above, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Peyton Manning did it. Yeah, he ended up winning the championship when he was basically gimpy. But I think that Brady is he's loyal. He wants to be on that same team. And how many times do we hear about that, right? Of one guy wanting to be with a team, and that's what he wants to do. Not too many guys just say, okay, I'm going to be with this team for life or whatever. It's, you know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mm, I don't know. I just personally think, really, if you ask me, the Patriots do win. Somebody's riding off into the sunset, and all of this just goes away.
And it won't be the owner. So,
Oh no, definitely won't be the owner.
yeah, I just wonder if one of them will happen. But hey, Robert Kraft is on record saying he believes that Bill Belichick will be back coaching. So, of course, all of them have come out at some point or another, disputed this, not been happy about this at all, including Belichick. So, but it is interesting that all his coaches are being interviewed, and I mean, not that hasn't happened in the past. I think we need to make that point. That it's not like Josh McDaniels hasn't gone out and interviewed in the past and taken other jobs, come back. You know, how many of his offense? You know, Charlie Weiss went and took the job at Notre Dame. I mean, Romeo Crennel. I mean, it's not like I think a lot is being made of that, but this happens all the time. So, you know, all this is just kind of in line, and right now, none of those guys have been hired yet. So that's another thing to point out as well. I mean, even though we keep seeing coordinators and coaches get fired, and it seems likely that perhaps one of those guys will end up taking one of these jobs, but right now it's not happening.
Not yet, but I say it's still only January.
Yeah, is very true. And one of the big hires that we talked about last time, Jon Gruden to the Oakland Raiders, has happened. 10 years, $100 million. Jon Gruden back in the NFL.
It's going to be interesting.
Something Mark Davis called a big effing deal.
Well, obviously it's a big deal. If your rumors are floating around for ownership stake in the team, and other rumors and reports about assistants getting 4 years guaranteed, yes, this is a gigantic deal. I mean, I personally think, is it a good move? Yes. Is it going to be the greatest move? No. Is it going to be a total disaster? No. It's a wait and see, and I think more good can come out of this than bad.
You know, there is a chance that that this could happen, right? That he's been out of the league such a long time that perhaps there's a lost touch thing. But there's a lot of coaches that have come in and they do a good job. And you got to think about where Jon Gruden's been, right? He's been the commentator for Monday Night Football. He's seen so many teams. He's seen the league change. He's talked to all the coaches. I mean, this is not a guy he's been a shut-in. I mean, it's not like with Joe Gibbs, who came back to coaching after being in NASCAR and still did pretty decent, actually.
Yeah, had he actually stuck with that, he could have had a little more success.
Yeah, and this is a guy that's been around the league, watching tape, you know, being involved in the college stuff when the draft happens. He's got a big personality. Yeah, he has some skeletons in the closet as far as how he treated his players that isn't always talked about. You know, as far as building them up and then tearing them down when you're behind closed doors. But perhaps he's learned from that in his time. And what do you make of the rumors of, oh, well, what if he doesn't get along with Derek Carr? Or is Derek Carr maybe not his favorite person? Or I just feel like, why would you take a job if you're not in favor of the quarterback that got the huge contract that's not going anywhere?
Exactly. Not to mention, Derek Carr was at his QB camp. He's even dealt with his brother David before this. Is much ado about nothing. And I honestly think that might have been a factor of why Gruden decided to take this job rather than holding out for a couple of others.
It also helps you have friendship with the owner.
Plus, in a good couple years' time, you're going to a place with no state tax. Big help.
Yeah, not wrong. Not wrong about that at all. But I feel like and then he will make a big deal about the 10 years and whatever, $100 million. Like, seriously, it's rare that a coach stays there that long. Yeah, you're paying him a lot of money, but I think you also have to remember you're also getting sort of a brand, a big name coach. You're getting somebody that's won a Super Bowl. You're getting someone that's coming from from a high-profile setting. He's somebody that can bring people into the building. He has a personality that helps the media get more into things and all that. I mean, the players are really into this. You have who is it? Donald Penn says this is like Steve Kerr coming to the Warriors. I mean, that's big praise, because we know what happened with Steve Kerr going to the Warriors. The Warriors all of a sudden started winning.
Well, asterisk. That was a 60-win team before he got there. That's why the comparison was more apt. He took a good team, one from in an organization that did their previous coach a little dirty, and he took them to the next level and beyond. The same thing could happen here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go wrong or go right for the Raiders. I mean, heck, it could be a one-year thing. Gruden comes in, the Raiders play awesome, and this whole thing works out. Or, they're 4-12 next year, and everybody's sitting here questioning what this is. So, we got to see how things go. I'm sure when the draft comes, everybody's going to have all ears and eyes on what the Raiders do. But this is not, of course, the only coaching change happening as well. Right after the Chiefs' loss to the Titans, which that was interesting in itself. You're up 21-3 and you lose 22-21 to a team that seemed inferior for most of the game.
Oh, that... Oy.
Yeah, Marcus Mariota makes a pass to himself for a touchdown. I mean, that's some crazy things happening. Derrick Henry goes off. It's just amazing to me how the Chiefs, Andy Reid and company bungled that one.
That one of the further mysteries in life. How do you blow an 18-point lead? How do you let a quarterback have a 6-yard touchdown pass to himself? How do you only run the ball 5 times in the second half? I don't get it.
That one I didn't understand either. I mean, you're talking about Kareem Hunt here. Also, I mean, the Titans did do a good job of kind of stifling him a bit, but still, I think the bigger thing... Look, we can talk, if you want to talk about the forward progress problems. I think that's...
Stupid
enough that Jeff Triple is even considering retiring.
As well as he should. Now, on the Marcus Mariota sack, I would have understood entirely, and I've seen this happen a little bit more now, under the guise of player safety, if you call the guy in the grass. I think, yeah, it's a little bit iffy, but I would have understood it.
Yeah, call him down by contact, not forward progress.
Exactly. Down by contact, because that's what in the grass is on a sack. Hey, he stopped right here, he's down right here, he ain't going anywhere, that's that. But the call... Oh, God, that was just stupid.
Yeah, because that was the one where the player wound up wrestling with the lineman and then he got the fumble. But it had already been forward progress. It's like, come on, you just cost the Chiefs something right there. Now, obviously, the one that got run back for a touchdown, Derrick Henry was down already. So, it didn't matter. But it's just, I think for me, and it also goes to player safety, something we saw done correctly that we did not see done correctly in another game. Travis Kelce gets driven into the ground, he's out. That changes the Chiefs. I mean, it changed them. They were not the same team after that.
Absolutely. They really couldn't improvise, and you forget how much of that passing game runs through Travis Kelce. He's not there. Tyreek Hill being very well covered for large chunks of that game. The Chiefs just didn't know how to compensate.
Yeah, you had to go back to the backup tight end who had some drops. And that's important. Where Kelsey's dependable. You know where he's going to be. He can run any kind of route you need him to. It's not the same thing when you have the backup in there, and that affects Alex Smith. It affects the whole team. And that might have been the reason why they can't run, is because they're going to make sure that Kareem Hunt's not going to be what burns them when they know that it's difficult for Alex Smith to pass now.
Mm-hmm.
But credit to the Titans for making the comeback, and now they get to play an even more difficult team in the Patriots, where they're going to be confident up there in Foxborough. That's going to be a difficult one, and nothing that I saw in that game against the Chiefs makes me change my thought that the Patriots were going through the championship game. Does it you?
No. I picked New England at the beginning of the season. I picked New England at the beginning of the playoffs. I'm definitely sticking with them now after seeing this. I mean, there's no way that Mariota's going to be able to do this twice. And especially with the weather, Saturday night in Foxborough, no.
I think the difference is that Brady, whether it's one player goes down or whatever, he finds a way.
Not to mention this creepy Colt Warrior Game of Thrones like post on his Instagram. That alone is like, what is in this guy's head?
Well, plus you've got all the drama. So that every time there's drama or something's being said about the guy, what does he do? He gets angry and he goes out there and has terrific games. I mean,
exactly, and I mean, who wouldn't want to set up for a terrific game when he's out there playing in the fog and he's like, "Oh, fate says you can't beat the storm." He goes, "I am the storm." I'm like, did he take something that I don't know about? Is there a little bit extra in all of this kale and plant-based diet? Is he sneaking a couple extra plants in there that we need to question? I'm not against it, don't get me wrong, but there are some side effects.
Certainly. One of the men that got stripped of their offensive coordinating duties during the game was Matt Nagy, and he is now the Chicago Bears coach.
I mean, the Bears really did not believe him when he said he called every play in that game. They know that he didn't, and that's why they hired him. He's like, you know what you're doing. We've got Trubisky. For the love of God, we need to score points. Can you do that? Fantastic. Welcome to Chicago.
We have a running game, very much like you have with Kareem Hunt. The only problem is you don't have wide receivers like the Chiefs did. So that might be something we certainly are going to be seeing from the Bears. Getting some help for Trubisky. Because, that was just... Sometimes it was almost scary to watch him. Who the hell is he going to throw to? And obviously hoping Zach Miller comes back healthy after his health scare as well. But, yeah, Matt Nagy is going to be interesting for the Bears. What they do here. And the Chiefs didn't waste any time. They already replaced the offensive coordinator with running backs coach Eric Bieniemy, who Andy Reid says he's known for years.
Okay. That might not go 100% well. He'll do the same thing to him that he did to Matt Nagy if he sees fit.
Yeah, I guess. But I think there's something to be said for hiring from within, right? Not just going to find somebody.
No, I get that part, but I mean, if you're willing to snatch the play calling duties from a very competent coordinator who was a quarterback himself, don't you think that you're liable to do that to a guy that you've known for years and who was in a lesser position?
Sure. As always, you will. But, I mean, nobody's untouchable on the staff when you're Andy Reid and trying to find scapegoats, but still, I think that's something to bring up, I think. for later down the road once we know if Benavidez brings anything. But for right now, that's the decision that they've made. We'll have to see how that pans out, obviously. And again, how much this offense is going to change because you don't know if Alex Smith is going to be back. Is it going to be Patrick Mahomes' team by then? How does that change? Does that change the offense at all? Does anybody else leave along with Smith? There's going to be lots of questions the Chiefs have to answer on that front when that time comes. Speaking of other hires here, before we get into one that involves the playoffs again, the Cincinnati Bengals hire Terrell Austin, former defensive coordinator for the Lions, as their new defensive coordinator. The Lions did improve defensively under him. I mean, they had some terrific players that helped in that regard with Slay, Glover, Haloti whenever Levy could be on the field.
Yeah, I get it. Oh, okay. It's one of those, it's like, yes, it makes sense, but you're still asking yourself, who?
You still are. I think it's. I think they'll be all right though. They could have made a worse hire than
Oh, yeah.
Austin. So
it could have been a lot worse. So
one that does affect a playoff team that we should talk about this because I made mention about concussion protocol gone wrong. The Panthers, after losing to the New Orleans Saints for the third time this season, in fact, the New Orleans paper said that, don't worry, Panthers, you don't have to go get a new owner because your new owner is the New Orleans Saints.
Oh.
Yeah, you did get owned 3 times. So,
Yeah. I mean, clever by the Saints, but man, damn.
One of the big talking points from that game is obviously Cam Newton has a concussion. But they don't even protocol the guy. They just let him go right back in.
No, they went ahead, they checked his eye, and that was it. And I thought, looking at the video initially, looking at the play live, looking at the replay afterwards, I think that the first hit was sort of just bad timing. You have one lineman try to take him down, his knee doesn't touch the ground, so he gets back up, and you have another lineman coming in, and to me, it looked like head to chest. And I'm thinking, oh, that's an ugly look, and that's unfortunate. And then on the replay after that, as everybody's getting up, the cleat kick, and I thought, you could have avoided that one. So it was already a bad situation that was made a lot worse by what Carolina did. I mean, did they learn nothing from what happened with Tom Savage in Houston or Russell Wilson in the Seahawks?
Apparently not. But, I mean, this is the playoffs, and you know that there was a difference between Cam Newton playing and Derek Anderson playing, so they were probably doing anything they could to make sure they had an advantage.
And I get that completely, but still, you know the league is going to come after you if you try anything funny, playoffs or not. So you got to figure out, it's like, we know this is worth it, but can we really take this hit over here?
Yeah, and Cam Newton takes a sack, which winds up being the end of things for the Panthers in a game that was pretty close for the most part. As you'd expect with divisional foes. I really enjoyed it. I think it was one of the better games of the weekend.
It didn't start out that way, but it did turn out to have even a better finish than Kansas City, Tennessee.
Yeah, very much so. And a way better finish than the Jaguars and Bills, even though the Jaguars did win. But man, that was not pretty at all.
I knew it was going to be low scoring, but Christ, I wasn't expecting that.
Whew. I mean, 10-3. The Bills had a shot at the end to tie it and go on to force overtime. Defensive struggle, I think we might have expected that, but good Lord, Blake Bortles.
How do you, as Blake Bortles, now if you would have told me one of the quarterbacks would have run for more yards than he would have thrown for, I figured, oh, okay, Tyrod Taylor must have had a monster day. But Blake Bortles? And it's not even like anything uber impressive. In fact, it's dreadful. 175 total yards. I can't explain it. I just can't.
I can't explain it either. How the heck just watching that game, it's like he's just running for his life the whole time. Just forget about passing. Maybe he should have just ran. Just forget about passing the entire game. Just run all the time. It's fine. It's like Steve Young out there. Like
Exactly.
What is happening here?
It's one of those, and even on the kickoff, that it should have been the exact opposite. I gotta apologize to Kansas City and Tennessee fans because we really didn't even cover it that much, but boy, did we wind up hyping up a stinker. I mean, great defense, obviously, at the end. Nathan Peterman himself showing why he will be cut by the Bills in the offseason. That's about all you can take away from it.
Yeah, I still don't know how you can blame him for all that. I mean, it's his first game since the game where he threw 5 interceptions. I mean, he did complete a first down. It's not like he immediately just failed. And Jalen Ramsey makes it a tremendous play on that interception.
Okay, yeah, I'm not discounting Jalen Ramsey whatsoever. He timed and jumped that route perfectly. But at the same time, don't you think that you should be even a teeny bit more self-aware, knowing that you threw 5 interceptions and a half, knowing that you just made a great play and ran and converted for a first down, then you fumble and then you throw a pick? Come on. Just come on.
Yeah. Look, I just don't know if Tyrod Taylor would have made that huge difference, though. You already had the time cutting against you as well, and it's not like the Jags defense was letting up at that point. I just feel like the Bills didn't do enough when they had opportunities in that game. And that's with Sean McCoy being gimpy at first, but he certainly played way better as he went on in the game.
Yeah, he really tired out that Jaguars front line, got some big runs. He was a little bit less gimpy than I expected, and he really was a big contributor. So I have to give him incredible credit for that and cutting out that performance.
The only one we haven't talked about here, I guess, because it doesn't have any kind of tie-in, but I think the Falcons went out and proved that we could certainly be seeing him in the Super Bowl again.
I think Minnesota's going to have something to say about that in the championship game.
I would say
if
so,
the
too.
Eagles don't take care of them first.
Yeah, and I think the Eagles are not happy at all with the Falcons being favored at this point. But, I mean, they caught fire at the right time. You are without Carson Wentz, which I think leads some people to believe that Foles isn't going to be equal to the task. They did find a great way to stop a powerful offense in the Rams, and It's not that much different than the Eagles.
True, and I mean, Nick Foles does have quite a bit more experience in going up against teams like Atlanta. I don't know. Can Matt Ryan and this team pull off another shocker? They've proven that, okay, the hangover's done. We took our Alka-Seltzer. We had our Bloody Mary. We're good to go. But now, can they take that next step? And it's a big question mark. I like the fact that they're favored. It makes sense the fact that they're favored. But I'm not so quick to jump on the bandwagon.
I can understand that. I wonder sometimes. I feel like the Eagles should be able to beat them, especially being at home where they've been really good. I wonder if maybe the Falcons are turning that page and finally shed that whole deal with last season and are ready to go on and all right, we're proving we're just as good this season. Just got to get through 2 more games and we're back where we were.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the Panthers did fire Mike Shula and quarterbacks coach Ken Dorsey after that game. Now they're going to interview Nerve Turner, possibly.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Ugh.
And I mean, do you think that you should be blaming the offense for this? I mean,
No.
you did try to implement a running game that didn't show up at all in that game, and there were various parts of the season where it wasn't there. McCaffrey did have the big long touchdown.
Yeah, I don't get it. And why fire Cam Dorsey when he's done everything he possibly could with Cam Newton? Cam Newton is still Cam, no matter what you do. You're only going to peak, but so far with him.
Yeah, I just feel like it's been shown that when we saw it this year when they tried to change the offense, it didn't work. They had to revert back to what they were before because Cam couldn't deal with it, and the running game wasn't working either, which that helps. But I don't understand this whole obsession with the okay. Now we're just gonna fire him. Okay. I
Yeah,
just don't think that Mike Shula was the reason here.
no, he wasn't. They're looking for a scapegoat.
Is there anything from? I feel like Jacksonville, the defense still is the defense, and they could certainly cause Big Ben problems. But if Blake Bortles plays like that again, I just feel like the Steelers are going to eat him alive.
They will, and it's really up to Blake to look at his film from what they did when they met early on in the season. See if he can replicate that. Because that's exactly what the Steelers are going to do. They're going to see what holes they can fix, how they can manipulate the Jaguars in coverage, so Ben doesn't go out and throw 5 interceptions again. I think with this defense, he'll probably get intercepted twice. But I think if Antonio Brown is back at 100% and ready to go, then I would give the Steelers a teeny bit of an edge. But if the Jaguars want to follow my prediction and get to the AFC Championship game, they've got to ride the arm of number 5.
You mean the legs of number 5?
I don't want to see a repeat.
I feel like Fournette's he's not come back from all the injuries, so he's not been the same.
No, and the running game's clearly not the same without him.
Yeah, and then that's why Bortles had to sub in and be the running game. I feel like also T.J. Yeldon not being there to block hurts as well because we saw Chris Ivy have some problems on that end, and just man, that offensive line was getting beat up after a while by that Bills defense. And Steelers defense, they have that extra chip on their shoulder from the Shazier injury. They're doing it for him. I feel like Big Ben, after all the talk about the retiring and everything else, and all the drama that happened with the Patriots, I feel like it's almost destined for Patriots Steelers in the championship game again.
Oh, Destiny has a funny way of doing these things and kind of screwing with you. So while I think it's Destiny, I'll agree with that. I say that would come up with the time, if anything, for the Jaguars to upset that apple cart.
Fair enough. It could certainly be on the cards, but I feel like the Bills showed the Steelers what you got to do, and they're certainly a team capable of doing that same thing. And the NFC wise, I feel like the Falcons might have shown me a lot more to where I feel like they have a shot against the Eagles, especially because, again, playoffs a different animal.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Foles has got to adjust to that. If they can stop Ajayi at least a little bit, I mean, I don't know, because you got the double running back situation, which the Rams were just focused on Gurley. How much does that affect what the Eagles do? And I mean, for the other NFC side, that was my conference championship game, so this is going to be interesting. That's happening a week before, but I felt like the Saints were the Saints, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Case Keenum is in a much better situation than he was when they played previously. I feel like the Vikings are still going to take that one. I didn't see anything that, I mean, the Saints did what they do. I didn't see anything that makes me go, okay, I still think the Vikings are just as good.
I still do too, and I still say, you talk about motivation. The Vikings have been having conversations about hosting that Super Bowl for quite some time. And with the possibility now that if Pat Shurmur gets hired somewhere else, Case Keenum could go with him. Yeah, Keenum's going to want to make sure his stock stays high for wherever he's going to play quarterback. And this would be a huge notch in that belt. I think the Vikings go one step closer.
Fair enough. I do as well, and we'll see it this weekend. The double dose of Saturday and Sunday games again. And sorry for not having the show on Sunday that I talked about. Just family decided to have other people around till really late, and that made it a problem. And then Monday night was just things going not well, so we're doing it 2 days later than we expected. But hopefully this weekend's a different deal. So we kind of stay with our picks that we made on the last episode. At least I do. I still think it's going to be Steelers and Patriots. Well, I guess I have to pick a different team now. Vikings and I think I'm going to say that the Falcons pull the upset off. I think the Vikings and Falcons get through.
Yeah, AFC, I'm sticking with Patriots, Jaguars. NFC, yeah, Minnesota, Atlanta. I don't like Nick Foles in this situation. I just don't.
Yeah, he's going to have a lot to prove, and maybe perhaps he can do it. He can say, look, what I know Carson Wentz is the guy and everything, but have faith in me as well. But all right, until perhaps Sunday, we will be there to discuss the games that were in the playoffs. And until then, we'll see you later, everybody.
Peace.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.